Hello everyone. I'm so happy to share my story with you today. This is not just any story, it's about how I followed my dream, went to Paris, learned English, and changed my life. I want to share something important with you. If you have a dream, no matter how big or small, don't give up. Believe in yourself, and you can achieve anything. This is my journey, and I hope it inspires you to follow your dreams too. Let me start by telling you a little about myself. My name is Sarah. I'm 25 years old, and I grew up in a small town. I always dreamed of traveling to new places and seeing the world. I wanted to visit big cities, see famous landmarks, and experience different cultures. But most people in my town stayed in the same place, worked regular jobs, and lived simple lives. I wanted more than that. I wanted to explore the world and do something special. One day, I watched a video about Paris. The Eiffel Tower, the cute streets, and the cozy cafes looked amazing. That's when I decided I had to go there. But there was one problem. I didn't speak English well, and I didn't know French either. How could I survive in Paris? When I told my parents about my plan, they didn't understand at first. Paris? How will you manage there? You don't speak English well, my mom said. My dad told me, why not stay here and work? You're doing fine. But I didn't listen to them. I kept telling them every day that I wanted to go to Paris, and I would learn English and make it happen. At first, they didn't think it was possible, but I didn't give up. I kept showing them how serious I was. One day, I decided to prove it. I picked up my phone, started reading an English book out loud, and showed them. I was nervous, but I didn't care. Slowly, my parents began to see how determined I was. That evening, I sat with them and said, I really want to go to Paris. It's my dream, and I'm determined to make it happen. To my surprise, my mom smiled and said, if that's your dream, then follow it. My dad nodded in agreement, and for the first time, I felt their belief in me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but having their support meant everything. The next few months were busy. I applied to a university in Paris, worked part-time to save money, and practiced English every day. I created a routine to help me improve. In the mornings, I practiced reading English books and newspapers. In the afternoons, I listened to English podcasts and watched English TV shows. In the evenings, I wrote short stories in English. Some days were tough. Sometimes I made mistakes or didn't know how to say something, but I kept going because I knew mistakes were part of learning. Finally, the day came when I received my acceptance letter from the university in Paris. I couldn't believe it. I was going to Paris. The day I left for Paris, I was filled with both excitement and nerves. My parents helped me pack and handed me a small notebook. Make sure to write down everything you learn in Paris, my mom said. At the airport, I hugged my parents goodbye and promised, I'll make you proud. As the plane took off, I gazed out the window and thought, this is it. My dream is finally happening. When I arrived in Paris, everything was new and exciting. The streets were busy, people were speaking French everywhere, and the buildings were beautiful. But I quickly realized that I needed English to get by. From ordering food to asking for directions, I had to speak English every day. The first time I ordered coffee, I was so nervous. My words came out slowly, and I made a mistake. But the cashier smiled and said, take your time. I felt better. That night, as I sat by my window looking at the Eiffel Tower, I couldn't believe it. I had made it to Paris. But now, the real challenge was just beginning. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window, and the sounds of the city filled the air, people chatting, cars passing by, and horns echoing in the streets. It felt surreal, like I was living in a dream, but this was my new reality. I had finally made it to Paris, and now the real journey was about to begin. I had to learn English and adapt to this vibrant city. I knew I had to practice English every day if I wanted to improve. So, I decided to start with something simple, grocery shopping. I sat down and wrote a list of things I needed in English: bananas, eggs, butter, and tea. With my list in hand, I headed to the local market. As I stepped into the store, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. But I reminded myself why I was here. I was determined to learn. "Excuse me," I said to the shopkeeper, pointing to a banana. "How much is this?" She smiled warmly and replied, €1 each. My heart leapt with joy. I had spoken in English, and she understood me. It was such a small moment, but it felt like a big victory. Encouraged by this, I kept practicing throughout the day. I asked questions like, "Where can I find the tea?" and "Do you have fresh eggs?" Each time, the words came a little easier, and my confidence grew. By the end of the day, I felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt before. It was just the beginning, but I was proud of how far I'd already come. The next day, I decided to take a step forward and joined an English class at a local language school. As I walked into the classroom, I was greeted by Miss Sophia, the teacher. She had a warm smile and a gentle voice that immediately made me feel more at ease. There were students from all over the world. Some were from China, others from Brazil, and a few from Europe. Everyone had different levels of English, and I couldn't help but feel a bit nervous when I noticed that some students spoke more confidently than I did. I sat quietly, trying to follow along, but I felt a little behind. Miss Sophia must have noticed my hesitation because she came over to me and said, "Don't worry, you're doing great. Everyone learns at their own pace. The important thing is that you're here, and you're trying." Her kind words made a world of difference. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that learning was a journey, not a race. I focused on improving step by step, and with each lesson, I became a little more confident in my ability to understand and speak English. By the end of that first day, I felt so much better. I knew that, with time, I'd get better, just like everyone else in the class. I started taking notes in class and practicing every day, even when it was hard. Some days felt tougher than others, but I kept pushing myself. Slowly, the words and grammar started to make more sense. Soon, I made new friends in the class, which made the journey a little easier. One of my new friends, Maria from Brazil, became my study partner. We would meet after class and practice together, laughing at our mistakes and correcting each other. It felt good to know that I wasn't alone on this journey. Maria taught me an important lesson: making mistakes is a natural part of learning, and it's okay to not get everything right. She would often say, "Every mistake is one step closer to speaking better." This really helped me embrace my errors rather than feel embarrassed by them. Outside of class, I made it a point to practice speaking English everywhere I went. At restaurants, I would order food in English, even if I wasn't sure I was saying it perfectly. On the street, I'd ask for directions, and in the park, I'd strike up small conversations with people I met. Sometimes, they didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them either, but they were always kind and patient. Their willingness to listen made me feel more confident. The more I practiced, the better I became, and slowly but surely, I started to feel at home in this new language. Each small success built on the next, and before I knew it, I was speaking with more ease and confidence. Months later, my English had improved so much that I hardly recognized the person I had been when I first arrived. I could speak more freely, without the constant nervousness that once held me back. The sentences I formed felt more natural, and I could understand most things I heard or read, whether it was conversations in the street, signs in stores, or even the news on TV. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough for me to communicate confidently. More than just the language, I had gained something even more valuable: confidence. I wasn't afraid to speak anymore, even if I made mistakes. I realized that the fear I had about being judged or misunderstood was slowly fading. Instead, I started seeing mistakes as part of the process. They didn't mean failure, they were a sign that I was pushing myself, learning, and growing. Each mistake became a lesson, a way for me to improve and get better. Every small success added up, too. The first time I had a real conversation in English, the first time I gave directions, the first time I understood everything in a movie without subtitles, all of these moments built on each other. They weren't huge achievements, but they were meaningful to me. They reminded me that I was getting closer to my dream. And as I stood there, thinking about how far I had come, I realized that this journey wasn't just about learning a language, it was about believing in myself and trusting that I could do anything if I worked hard enough. My dream was coming true, and I was no longer just dreaming, I was living it. One day, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, gazing at the Eiffel Tower. The view was even more breathtaking than I had imagined when I first arrived. It sparkled in the sunlight, its majestic frame towering over the city. I couldn't help but smile to myself as I thought about how far I had come. It had been almost a year since I first set foot in Paris, filled with hopes and dreams, uncertain about the future, but determined to make it work. And now, here I was, looking out at the city I had always dreamed of calling home. I had done it. I had learned English. It wasn't just about mastering the language, though. It was about much more than that. It was about proving to myself that I could face my fears and challenges, push past my limits, and never stop believing in myself. It was about building a life in a new country, one step at a time, despite the hurdles that came my way. And through it all, I had learned that the real journey was not just about reaching a destination, but about the growth and transformation that happened along the way. Learning English has opened so many doors for me. It had allowed me to communicate with people from different cultures, make lifelong friends, and even pursue opportunities one had once thought were out of reach. But more importantly, it gave me the confidence to face new challenges with a sense of purpose and resilience. Every conversation, every small victory, and even every failure has taught me something valuable. Paris had become my home in a way I never imagined. I wasn't just living here as a visitor anymore. I was part of this city, its culture, and its rhythm. And English has been the bridge that helped me connect with this new life. It had allowed me to navigate through the complexities of daily life, but it had also given me the strength to chase after my dreams with determination and courage. As I stood there, watching the Eiffel Tower glow against the twilight sky, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I was no longer just the girl who dreamed of Paris, I was the woman who had made it happen. I had taken risks, faced challenges, and believed in myself when it was hard. And in the end, I realized that this journey, this adventure, was the most important thing I could have done for myself. Paris wasn't just a place on the map anymore, it was the place where my dreams became real.